I'm Michael Sullivan, and I am sitting next to Mitch Little, and potentially incoming member of the Texas House. Still have the inconvenience of a general election to deal with, but you're going to knock the Democrat out of the way there, right?
Negligible opposition.
Negligible opposition.
Negligible opposition.
Okay, and next to Mr. Little is Representative Steve Toth, who just had a resounding victory, being challenged in the Republican primary by a kind of left-of-center school board guy.
Democrat.
Basically a Democrat.
Democrat in the Republican primary. Go figure. We've never seen that happen before.
It's a big one there. And then clearly the moderate of the bunch next to Steve Toth is Tony Tinderholt, who was not opposed in the primary.
I guess if you...
I mean, what does a guy have to do to get opposed in the Republican primary, Tony?
You got to tell everyone how bad the speaker is. you got to fight the speaker. You got to get your mic shut off and be told that you're not allowed to ask questions anymore, and then you don't get an opponent.
So I want to start with that incident, actually. I appreciate you bringing that up. I've been covering the Texas Legislature since the early 1990s. I think that was the first time I had seen a Speaker of the House turn off the microphone of an elected member of the Texas House. What did that signal to you? What did it signal to your colleagues?
Well, I think it signals that we are currently under a dictatorship in the Texas House. And look, he didn't like what I said. I'm thinking you guys will be okay with it. I basically, the day before it, asked him, why haven't they released the numbers of how much the sham impeachment costs? And that made him mad. So the next day when I went up to ask questions, he didn't like the question I asked. And so he had this whole prepared thing that they worked all night the night before with the Democrat parliamentarians to make it so that I was no longer able to go up and ask parliamentary inquiries, which, I mean, I'm an elected official of 205,000 people, and I have the same rights that everybody else does. One person should not be able to dictate that I can or cannot ask questions or do what I want to do on behalf of the constituents that I represent.
How much, and I'm going to put this both to you and to Mr. Toth, how much did that treatment by Speaker Phelan, not only of you, because I've known you now for a while, kind of disclosure, I think of you as a friend. You've never struck me as a guy who's very vindictive. You've done a whole lot of things in your life that kind of tend to mellow out some of that stuff. But certainly it had to impact you. How much did that impact approaching the contract with Texas from a fixing the rules of the chamber?
I think it's important, when we started putting the contract with Texas together, we want the speaker to be a person that makes the rules fair for everybody, from the far left to the far right, and we want it to be equal. And I think that was the way that we went into it, was a speaker should be kind of neutral and not particularly involved in everything that happens other than enforcing the rules. Let me tell you something you didn't ask is, how did it make me feel about the other members? And I was pretty disturbed that the other members sat quietly and allowed that to happen, regardless of who they were. When you sit idly by and something like that happens and you don't try to fix it, you're a part of the problem.
Right.
And I'd add the whole experience, from that to the cover-up to the impeachment, the beginning of the impeachment, and how they did it. It was a watershed moment for a lot of us in the Texas House, and it was at that time that it really steeled the spine of four of us that we had to come together and stand against it. And I think it's what started the trajectory that we're on right now that has led to the biggest turnover in the Republican Party in primaries, probably in the history of Texas. The number of moderate Republicans that are going to be displaced with conservatives. Mm-hmm. It's cool.
So, Steve, you have been your approach to the speaker has been very interesting. You, as you very publicly talked about, you tried to give him a chance. You voted for him as speaker. Did you? How then surprised were you by the tone and tenor of his speakership?
So, in the 87th legislative session, I carried the bill to end gender mod.
Right.
I got a promise from him before the 88th session. He said, if there's anything I can promise you, we will pass gender mod in the 88th session. I felt like a moral responsibility to get that bill passed. I promised people I would get that bill passed. We got that bill passed. And so once that was done, though, it was the killing field of Republican priorities. And so the 88th session, aside from that one bill that we should have passed in the 87th session, the 88th session became the great apology tour and the great apology session to the Democrats, because they tried a palace coup at the beginning of the 88th session with Travis Clardy, where Travis went to a bunch of Democrats and tried to pull a Joe Strauss 2.0. And it was at that time that Dade made no attempt, any attempt whatsoever, to care about word one about any of our priorities. It was all about holding on to the Speaker's office.
Right. Mr. Little, you are coming into this with a very different perspective from when it comes to the House rules and the House processes, as one of the attorneys representing Attorney General Paxton during impeachment. From that outside perspective, what did you see that needed to happen in the House to stop that sort of thing from happening again?
I think I talked about this a little bit this morning at the grassroots breakfast. We enter into a time that the 2023 legislature was a function of the transactional nature of the House. And everybody kind of points to the impeachment as being the kind of chief transaction of the legislature. But it was really bookended by 25% growth in the state budget under Republican control. So why would Republicans bargain away the state budget when on the other end of the legislature, you're not only not getting all the things passed that we need to, which is banning social transitioning for minors, but you're getting an impeachment on the back end. I think fundamentally the bargain that's been struck between the Republicans and the Democrats is broken. We need to shift the legislature away from a transactional model where it's, Steve, you'll take the L this time, but we'll get you next time, buddy. We need to shift it back to an ideological approach where policy simply passes because it's good policy or fails because it's bad policy, not because we're paying someone today for a hamburger tomorrow. You know what I mean?
When you guys look ahead to the coming legislative session, we're 7 months at this moment out from the start of the next legislative session. What are you hearing from your colleagues, both the men and women who are coming in with your class, Mr. Little, and then for Toth and Tinderhold, kind of the more established? Is there a broad sense that the rules need to be changed, that the processes need to be changed, that the culture needs to be fixed, or are you guys? I mean, let's face it, the three of you you're kind of weirdos. You know? Is it a tempest in a teapot?
This is one man's perspective. We have a group of conservative legislators who are coming in who want to reform the rules and the leadership process in the House, and you have a very large swath of the Republican caucus who's holding on to something that was, or at least was until May 29th, hoping and expecting that there's going to be continuity of leadership. I don't see a future where that's possible. These guys may have a different perspective on it, but we're looking forward to something better, something more functional for the people of Texas and the Republican voters.
Clearly, there has been a paradigm shift in Texas and in the legislature. I don't know of anything other than maybe 5 or 8, maybe 10 at the most, out of 86 Republicans that are talking about Democrat committee chairs. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. And when you've got guys like Tom Oliverson that are saying there will be no Democrat committee chairs, anyone that is talking about running for Speaker of the Texas House has said there will not be any Democrat committee chairs. They have not. And so we've got to hold their feet to the fire. You've got to hold our feet to the fire that we're not going to stand for it. And so we need your help desperately.
I think the contract with Texas is gaining momentum. People are coming up with other lists, which is fine. That means we're all moving in the right direction. I just saw some people out in the crowd here that I think some people might like to see. Did you see Brent Money and Nate Schatzline over here? Brent Money, can you guys come up here? I want people to see, real quick, the types of people that are going to fight for your liberty and your freedom. Brent Money and Nate Schatzline are a part of the contract with Texas, and I kind of want
Here.
Nate, if he doesn't mind. No, Nate.
Just crashed the party.
Yeah, Nate just crashed the
I
party.
know. There, you know,
And
the chat line comes in, crashes
And
the
I
party.
did that without permission, but I wanted people to be able to meet them and see who they were because they're a big part of this contract with Texas. What he asked was, do you see change happening in the Texas House with a speaker and Democrat chairs and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to bring the change whether they want it or not. So we're kind of in a position where, as we've seen, as we flipped races, you guys were just talking about it up here, but as we flipped races over and over again, and now we're going to flip all these, I believe we're going to sweep it for our runoff on Tuesday. But as we go forward, the reality is we weren't waiting for anyone's permission to revolt against the establishment. We were going and serving our constituents, which immediately puts us in a bucket that they call us, revolters or those that are ineffective. Well, I'm here to tell you, the most effective thing we could ever do is not worry about getting our names on a bill, but worry about getting the right policy and the right person in power so that we can affect the next generation of Texas.
Outstanding.
I want to say these three guys and Brian Harrison put their reputations and their positions on the line to support myself and Mitch and other guys. It is against the rules of the Republican caucus for them to campaign for us against incumbents. And they said, we don't care about the rules. We're trying to win Texas and win America here. And Mitch and I and the other ones that are coming in are going to carry that same courageous spirit forward, I promise. We are tired of an imperial Speaker of the House. We are tired of, really, honestly, even knowing who the Speaker of the House is. The Speaker of the House is supposed to be a servant to the members of the House to help get legislative priorities passed. We are not supposed to be, as members of the House, subservient to the Speaker. That is, the days of that are over. I think there are enough of us that even if we cannot achieve everything we want to, we are going to make their life extremely difficult to continue business as usual. And the people that are at this convention, the people who are delegates here, the people who are voters, have given us that charge and will continue to back us up. And if we need more reinforcements 2 years from now, we'll go get them.
Let me add this one thing. You guys have made our job so much easier. And the reason why is that you're knowledgeable about the shenanigans that have been going on in the Texas House. Texas voters are more aware and clued in than they have ever been before thanks to Scorecard, but especially thanks to Chairman Matt Rinaldi. Chairman Matt Rinaldi has been willing to hold legislators' feet to the fire and to speak the truth about what's going on. God help us if we ever go back to a Republican Party where the speech is nothing more than spin. We don't need any spin. We just need people that are going to run this party, that are going to speak truthfully and honestly about what's going on so that y'all are in the know. And if y'all are in the know, you're going to make good decisions, you're going to vote good people into office, and you're going to vote bad people out of office.
That's right.
All right, so if these folks here, folks around the state, want to encourage their legislators to support the contract with Texas, what should they do?
Let me give a practical step for those of you who are delegates here at the convention. The best thing that you can do, the best ammunition you can give us, take that ban Democrat chairs legislative priority and push it to number 1. That will give us the process that we need to be able to speak to the other legislators and say, hey, that era's over. There's a new era, and it'll allow us to actually bring forward the remainder of the priorities. It's kind of like the one to rule them all, if you will.
I would say the first thing you need to do is go to contractwithtexas.org or .info. Look at that and see whether your legislator signed the contract or not. And if they didn't, encourage them to, right? There's a lot of people out there that are coming up with other lists. There's 12 items on the list. None of them should be controversial, but I agree with Mitch. I think the number one thing we need to do is push the priority all the way to the top, no Democrat chairs. Not having Democrat chairs and not having a speaker that supports Democrats will change the landscape in the Texas House. It'll change the history of what's happened, and it'll be forever changed in the Texas House. Priorities will be passed first, and you'll be happy with your speaker and your Republican House members.
I'll add just one thing. The reality is this contract with Texas is meant to do many things, including reform the House, but we are trying to absolutely decentralize the power of the speakership. And we are at a time right now where we are on the cusp of changing the entire landscape of the Texas House. And what you need to ask your representative is, do you fear man or do you fear God? Because if you fear God, that's the end of fearing man. And right now, it's not a time for fear. It's a time to press forward, and it's time to hold these legislators accountable, because I want you to ask specifically, what bullet point that empowers Phelan do you disagree with on this? What bullet point do you disagree with that's going to empower someone, that's going to take power away from members and give it back to the lobby and back to the special interest groups? This is a time to rise up and actually fight.
All right, Mr. Schatzline, Mr. Tinderholt, Mr. Little, Mr. Toth. Mr. Money, Mr. Little, Mr. Toth. Got to keep you. Oh, the beards are very confusing.
And Matt Morgan, and Matt Morgan right here.
And Matt Morgan right there. That's fantastic. Great guys. Thanks y'all for taking a few minutes to chat with us.